Alright, so I've been watching Parasyte for a second time, and there was something that annoyed me during my first watch through that hasn't changed all these years later upon watching it again. Or I don't even know if annoyed is the right word, but it is the way they handled this character, Kana. I should note two things. One, this is based off the anime, not the manga. I don't know if anything's different there. Also, spoiler alert through about episode 13, 14. I'm going to do my best to avoid any major spoilers after that point. Just maybe some base details on directions that they went. But everything from, that point and below is fair game. But yeah, a turning point in this series is when they killed off this character, for me. It seems to be a thing people are a little divided on, but in my opinion, it was a big mistake. And there are two big reasons for this. First of which is her supernatural abilities, or ability. She is the only human character that we know of who could detect parasites and also emit a little bit of whatever they sense when they know that they're around each other. Well, actually, technically something that I feel is forgotten a lot is that they introduced this character later in the series who can also kind of do that. But I don't know. I don't see it mentioned a lot, and I feel like I don't really remember, but I think it may have came down more to his experiences as opposed to an actual ability like Kana had. Nor do I know any other correlation between the two other than that. But yeah, there was just so much that they could have done with that. And they pretty much just dropped it at this point. I mean, we don't know where it originated from. I mean, Miji kind of mentioned that her skills were improving, and I believe she thought so as well. So we don't know what sort of potential was left on the table, how much she could have grown, and what she was truly capable of. I think that could have been really interesting. I mean, at this point in the story, Miji knows that Shinichi pretty much told her everything. And surprisingly, he was being a little compliant. It already happened, and let's not make this any more of a situation than it has to be. And actually, I'm a little surprised he wasn't a little more curious himself, especially under these circumstances, with how much he pursues knowledge. It could have been really interesting and cool to see them sort of work together and sort of see what Kana is capable of. Hell, maybe to a certain degree we saw Shinichi sort of grow and learn his power, but I feel like this would have been a whole other thing because of the circumstances and how every other character we see other than Shinichi and Kana sort of already have their power figured out. And then just what are the origins here? I think canonically that the parasites are supposed to be aliens. So have they existed on Earth longer than expected and are just sort of re-emerging now? And perhaps Kana is a descendant of some earlier prevalent parasites? Or was there just another wave that was wiped out? But then, once again, she sort of has their bloodline. There was just so much interesting things that they could have done, and they could have really made her into like a major supporting character who could have assisted our protagonist through future trials. The second thing that I feel like was a major loss was her personality. Now, I know this is a little debatable. I know some people kind of found her a little annoying, but overall, I feel, especially with the human characters, but to a different extent, the parasites, we see some very similar personalities. Like, I feel like with a lot of the human characters, they serve to sort of just continue to remind Shinichi how different he is now. And that's fine, and it was important for character development. But Kana was the one character who wasn't like that, the one human. A good point that I didn't really think of that I saw someone else bring up is just how much of opposites Satomi and Kana were, with Satomi being attached to Shinichi's human side and Kana being attached to his parasite side, which is something we haven't really seen a lot of crossover. Both sides are sort of hostile towards each other, and besides a couple other characters, Kana was one of the people that was sort of in between, and those to me were some of the best characters in the series. And that's something in general I feel the series began to lose around this point. One of the most enjoyable part was just seeing the interactions Shinichi was having with everyone as he was, going through his whole thing. And a mild spoil for later, towards the end, he just sort of goes off on his own, and I just kind of found that to be a little more boring and just not as entertaining as the series once was. And I almost feel like this sort of helped to set that in motion. And like I said, she's not alone. Another character I enjoyed was Uda. He was unique, a bit of a comic relief, but I would have liked to see more of him, and he also was sort of, obviously also in a very similar situation to Shinichi, also skirting that line in between. And Raiko was another character who also sort of did this. Also, apologies if I haven't said it already, but I'm sure I'm butchering a lot of these names. But yeah, I will admit Kana's personality was a little creepy, stalkery, but I just felt like it was something different. And I guess the one thing I kind of worry about too is if they sort of turn this into a love triangle-esque thing, which is a direction I didn't really want to see them go. But at the same time, I feel like they could have given Kana some more development to sort of get around that. Like maybe she sort of learns more to separate her curiosity from her lust, and maybe realize her feelings came more from curiosity of Miji, but sticks around considering she's really curious about, the rest of that whole parasite thing. Now, for some positives, I do like the character development that happens with Shinichi, as well as Mitsuo. I kind of like how they sort of realize they're both Mitsuo and Kana sort of becoming stalker, creepy, and then Mitsuo's whole confrontation with Shinichi after Kana's death, and how that was something they could have also sort of expanded upon if Kana was alive, just sort of their relationship. And because in their last meeting, she was like, "Oh, I probably went too far. I didn't mean to be that cold towards him." So they could have had him, maybe in danger from Parasyte or become a parasite himself, which I guess it would be kind of rehashing what we did with Shinichi. But Kana is a bit different of a character, and I don't know, to me that was one of the strengths of the series to begin with, so I don't think I would really care. But even then, Shinichi's grief and his involvement in the death, which I feel like is very important, because when his mom died earlier in the series, he didn't really have a lot of control. He thought about trying to stop their vacation, thought there probably wasn't that much of a risk, and changed his mind. And then what happened on the vacation where he had no way to really do anything. With Kana, his actions led to her being in the wrong place at the wrong time, which I feel like took an important toll on Shinichi. But at the same time, I feel like there's many other characters who could have filled that role. I feel like Satomi's kind of a character people go to by default for this, but I don't know. Like I kind of said, I didn't really want Kana and Shinichi to end up together, especially with Kana acting the way she did. I didn't want to see her get Shinichi in that way, I guess. And therefore, I feel it was kind of important to keep Satomi around to prevent that and to maybe help Kana even move on and sort of realize it's over a little more. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's maybe a direction they could have gone. But obviously, this would have been major for Shinichi, and it could have also led to some major developments. Like, we've seen Shinichi sort of question where his, emotions and morals are at as the story goes, and he becomes more assimilated with Minji. And I feel like him maybe seeing this happen to Satomi and sort of like, did I love her as much as I actually did? And that sort of questioning and that could have been interesting. But like I said, I don't think it really would have been essential or even the best way to go. I feel like she could have still had a decent dynamic, even though I don't recall it really being fully realized in the rest of the series, in my opinion. A character I tend to go to is Yuko. We've seen her, similar to Kana, be very curious and do her own investigation on parasites. Granted, maybe she was scared out of it, but it wouldn't be out of character to see her get caught up in that again, and for maybe Shinichi to sort of step in and have things play out a very similar way. And like I said, this is a friend of Satomi. She seems to be decent friends with Shinichi as well. Things could have played out very similarly without losing a major character at that point, because at this point Yuko's arc is kind of ended. She's just sort of there now. I guess they could have gone with Yuko and Satomi's other friend, Akio. Maybe give her a little more of a prevalent arc. Maybe she gets curious after, some hints from Yuko or something. Or maybe even, I don't remember her name, I didn't bring her page up, but that girl Shinichi met when his father was in the hospital. Maybe she, for some reason, came back into things and was the one caught up in this sort of thing. Another part of this, too, is maybe an argument you can make is that they didn't want a character to be that involved with Shinichi and Minji, but then they immediately introduce Koro Mori, who, like Kana, also discovers what's going on, and this happens, like, immediately after what happened. So perhaps that argument's kind of out of the window. And hell, I was looking forward to seeing Kana interact with Minji, and also sort of curious why she almost seemed like she, to a certain extent, doubted Shinichi at first. Like, I feel like her character arc was just getting revved up, only for it to be stopped immediately. Granted, it was kind of seen coming. She was being sort of stupid and reckless, which is why some people probably found her annoying. And I'll admit it was a little frustrating at points to watch as well. And then obviously, they gave her probably a little more of a focus than other characters ever had towards the end, which is sometimes a sign that something's about to happen to get you to care a little more. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, I really don't understand the decision there. Like I said, I know some people are like, oh, she served her purpose and she was a little annoying, but there was just too much on the table. And it's not like she needed like a happy ending or anything either, because I look at Nobuko, Shinichi's mom, who I would say also had a bit of a tragic end. Obviously, she was a little hurt and upset about sort of the direction her and Shinichi's relationship was going right before their vacation. But once again, I feel like you had other characters also pressuring Shinichi on what's different, and also she had a still also had a good effect on Shinichi and some of the other characters in that as well after her passing, so it still sort of worked out, even though it sucked. And it didn't feel like there was too much on the table, unlike Kana. It just sucks too, because she's just sort of like a tragic character. Like, you just see what her loneliness and curiosity got her into, and you can't help but feel bad or even relate to a certain degree to what she went through. But yeah, something kind of crazy that I sort of noticed when browsing the wiki is just how different her design is from the anime to the manga. I feel like that's the case for a few different characters you probably saw though as well. And how they did her dirty twice, because with the opening and closing, I mean, that barely looks like her. I mean, they may still have been finalizing designs. She wasn't introduced until a few episodes into the series, but she's missing her iconic earmuffs and sort of has brownish hair and I think a different colored uniform than we wound up getting when she was introduced. So just overall, I don't feel like she was properly represented. And like I said, the second time around, it's more frustrating just because I don't know, I just think of more of what could have been. Like when I first watched it, I was really enjoying it, and even though they did something I didn't agree with, there was still sort of the hope that things would keep going to the level I was expecting and liking. But I don't know. After that arc, there's another arc sort of revolving a bit around Ryoko. I actually thought this happened before. I sort of got events mixed up, but it's after, and this one's still pretty good. But after that, I think is where things sort of aren't as good, in my opinion, and sort of knowing now of where we're going on top of what was left on the table. It just sucks because it was going so good and there's so much potential, and I just sort of wish, in my opinion, I know some people may have liked it after that point, but I don't know, to me a little after the first half is, I'm probably not going to rewatch it after Ryoko's done in this arc. But like I said, the rest of it was really good and definitely worth a rewatch or a first time watch if you haven't already. I don't know, like I said, because then I was sort of mixing up things that happened later on. And like I said, I won't say specifics, but I thought certain events triggered certain consequences. And for some reason, I thought Ryoka's stuff all happened in a row. I forgot she sort of went into the background for a while. So then I was thinking certain arcs happened later, and certain developments around those arcs happened with different arcs than they actually did. And I don't know, maybe that's just me being salty about what happened with Kana. I was looking into the series though a little more, just looking through the wiki before this, and I just found some stuff kind of interesting. Like Shinichi originally didn't have glasses. Like I said, some of the creative liberties that they took in sort of the redesigns for the anime, or just how it occurred so long after the manga. The manga finished in 95. The anime didn't start until 2014, like almost 20 years later, which is kind of nuts and surprising because I saw like they sold like 11 million copies, and it won some like awards around when it ended, and I think a little before too. So it seemed like it did decently well to have to wait so long for something like this, but I think the manga sales like more than doubled when they actually released the anime, which I guess goes to show the power of that sort of thing. And even like I don't really know much about what happened in between those 2 points, but I know there were some short stories that were released, and then like another side story thing they released like in 2021 called Reverse or something. And I think Netflix picked up the series for something. I think it's called Parasyte the Gray, which is concerning because I'm just the only anime related thing I've seen Netflix produced was the Death Note one. So hopefully this gets a little better treatment than that. Although they did follow the material pretty loosely, maybe they'll see the potential in Kana too. My hopes aren't high for them doing any better of a job, but who knows? And like I said, there's a lot of other things that are great in the series that they could easily mess up. It's kind of nuts though. I actually started watching because I got Crunchyroll recently because I wanted to watch the Nier anime. So then I started rewatching some stuff. I rewatched Tokyo Ghoul, which I never put together how they're both kind of connected. And like I said, there's parts of both series I really enjoy, but I saw something that sort of connected the two online somewhere when just looking up random Tokyo Ghoul stuff. So that's what sort of brought me to revisit the series now. It almost has you wonder, though, with the popularity of Tokyo Ghoul, if that sort of inspired them to revisit this and, do the anime and all of that after, given the comparisons you can make between the two. But yeah, hopefully this worked out. I just sort of wanted to vent all of that out. I know this is sort of a weird, I assumed I couldn't really show clips or anything, so I just sort of went through fandom galleries. It's a bit of an unexpected trip. Like I said, I was planning to do more Engage or some Golden Eye or Hi-Fi Rush stuff soon, so that's coming. But like I said, for the second time, I got really fired up about this and just wanted to add everything I can think of in this form to the conversation, I guess, even if it isn't the most relevant thing now. But I'm sure, like I said, there's a new series. People are new people are going to find it, and hopefully this helps. I guess other people are just sort of fired up and in disagreements about this decision sort of have a little bit of a relief, I guess. I don't know.